What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode here at American Overwatch. Please forgive me. I am not feeling that well this morning. So if I seem like I'm off my game, it's because I'm not really feeling that well. With that being said, yesterday I live streamed the entire 6 hours of testimony and questioning um, what seemingly has been mostly from Adam Schiff. Now, there were some other representatives kind of went back and forth to try to make it look fair. Um, thing is that the House rules, Adam Schiff's rules, was that I think the two leaders of the majority and the minority party, I believe, got like 45 minutes, and then the rest of the representatives got about 5 minutes to ask their questions. And you know, I gotta say that it was unbelievably the biggest waste of taxpayer money. It was unbelievably the biggest waste of our congressmen and congresswomen's time. There was absolutely nothing that came out of those hearings that is even worth highlighting. Now, in the news, in the mainstream media, they're going to go and they're going to replay all the things that were said, and they're going to make a big deal about things, and they're going to hinge on some stuff. But there are a couple of things that came out of the hearing yesterday that I actually want to highlight. So yesterday's hearing was about Deputy Assistant Secretary Kent and Acting Ambassador Taylor testifying under oath to their knowledge, I guess, of whatever it is that they're trying to uncover. I guess this quid pro quo, or this I guess their new favorite word is extortion. So I have over here on my computer, if I can find it. I guess maybe I closed it. I don't know what I did with it. Okay, so the vast majority of the time spent questioning these folks was done by Adam Schiff, and I'll tell you why. That's because not the majority, but several of the Democrats yielded their time. Excuse me, yielded their time to Adam Schiff, to which he again engaged the witness. So it was like a one man, prosecutor, trying to get down to the bottom of it. Um, and I'll tell you, Mr. Kent, he is a very smart man. He knows what to say. He knows how to answer the questions without maybe incriminating himself. And he also knows when not to say certain things. He's very quick to point out to, well, you can find that in the record, you can look back, you could do this, you could do that. So he doesn't necessarily answer that stuff directly, and that's in part because he doesn't want to perjure himself. Listen, when you go in front of Congress and you testify, and this was done during the Nixon hearings, okay, absolutely done. Now, granted, it was the Watergate scandal, and there was a lot of high-powered people involved, and they were trying to protect themselves and protect the president and all this other stuff. But it's funny because if they would have simply just told the truth, then they wouldn't necessarily be in prison, because they're in prison for perjury. And some served 4 months, some served a couple of years, and maybe there's a little bit more charges that were added on after the fact, but for the most part, they spent time in prison because of perjury. So that's why Mr. Kent is so quick to say, well, you have it on record, review the record, and you'll find your answer. Well, Mr. Taylor, on the other hand, was very shaky, very, very shaky in his testimonies. Um, He was real slow. He was real stumbly across the board. And Adam Schiff, man, this guy is. If you ever came across this guy as a prosecutor, if he ever prosecuted criminal cases in the district courts, if any of those people are in prison because of this man, their cases definitely need to be relooked at because he is the most untrustworthy lawyer I've ever seen in my life. He utterly shakes the efficacy of being a lawyer, and wherever his license is at to practice law should be questioning. I'm so sorry. Should be questioning his ethics. The fact that he read such a horrendous transcript in front of people, which is a blatant lie to the American people as a legislature, now congressmen and women can't be impeached, but they can be expelled. They can absolutely be expelled by 2/3 vote. So now the majority of the House is controlled by the Democrat, and I seriously doubt that they would get 2/3 vote to expel this asshole. But he needs to go, and he needs to lose his law license. Period. Like I said, they yielded a lot of the Democrats yielded a lot of their time to this man to ask questions that it was erroneous. A couple of things that I want to point out that I have gleaned from the testimonies was that April, President Zelensky gets elected. President Trump congratulates President Zelensky on the win. Now, I guess I'm under the impression now, sometime this week, sometime soon, that President Trump is going to actually release that transcript. Why? I have no idea. I don't, for transparency's sake, I guess, but I don't think he really has to. There's no need for it. The whistleblower isn't a whistleblower. The whistleblower is basically somebody who made public a conversation that he overheard, or that he didn't even overhear, that he heard from a third person. Okay, he's like third or fourth removed from this phone conversation. It got the facts totally wrong. That's why we play the telephone game when we're kids. Okay, that's called hearsay, folks. Hearsay. That's why it's not admissible in court, because when the fact witness, the material witness that had direct knowledge of the evidence or crime that took place, tells someone, who then tells someone, facts get lost along the way. And things get embellished, things get twisted, maybe intentionally, maybe unwittingly, but nonetheless, it happens. We know this happens. That's why hearsay is not admissible in a criminal court, period. Now, granted, this isn't a criminal court, which is why they have these assholes here who have hearsay knowledge, who's testifying. Listen, Kent and Taylor never met President Trump. Let that sink in. I got another strong point, and I haven't done any research into this, and I was shaken by this knowledge, but when President Trump was on the phone with President Zelensky from Ukraine, the head foreign service officer, the acting ambassador to Ukraine, Ambassador Taylor, wasn't on the phone conversation. How is it that your senior foreign service officer on the ground in the country isn't on a phone conversation, to which your role, your responsibilities as the ambassador is to carry out the foreign policy of the President of the United States? You serve at the pleasure of the President of the United States, and you're not on a phone conversation between two heads of state in which the other head of state is Is the president of the country that you're signed to? And they went on to say, oh, well, this is normal. It's mostly National Security Council members and things like that. Listen, if that doesn't make sense to me, okay? You can have Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the phone. That makes sense. Anytime that you're having a conversation with anybody outside of, with any other head of state or whatever have you, you would want your Secretary of State to be on the phone conversation. Absolutely. Okay. But you would also want your ambassador. Now, granted, could this, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo send a cable over to the ambassador, this, that, and outline all these things, the minutes of the conversation, whatever have you? Yeah, absolutely. Maybe the ambassador's busy doing other things, having other meetings. Absolutely. But I feel like, not every day does the President of the United States have a phone conversation with the President of a country to which you're assigned to, the post that you're assigned to. So I feel like you could take the 15 or 20 minutes out of your busy day to listen in on the phone conversation. And that just utterly blows my mind. And I don't understand why that's not practice. So the fact is that neither one of these folks was on the phone conversation that took place. Now you have to understand something, guys. This all started with the whistleblower complaint saying that there was a quid pro quo, that the President of the United States was withholding military aid that was already congressionally approved in lieu of an investigation into his political opponent. Okay, that's what the Democrats are alleging. That's the premise of the investigation. But then now there's this spin-off of the investigation. Now we have the phone transcript conversation, so we really don't need the whistleblower. And now we learn that Adam Schiff or his goons had contact with the whistleblower before the complaint was even filed. Now we have Adam Schiff that's, wishy-washy. He's saying, oh, well, I didn't know who the whistleblower was. And yesterday he said that he had no idea who the whistleblower is. Okay? This is the most frustrating thing about this whole process. So we have these two guys, and I guess this is probably going to be my last point. I have the transcripts up here from I guess some website called rev.com. I'm not sure to the accuracy. I did listen to every single thing. It does sound pretty accurate to me. I just want to read something that was absolutely crazy. Okay, so here's the main point. Now, the theme that surrounded all of this, the person that seemed to be at the center focal point of basically all of this is Ambassador Sandlin, okay? Ambassador Sandlin, I believe, is the ambassador to the EU. Don't shoot me if that's wrong. But which kind of Ukraine isn't a member of the European Union, so there's a lot of question as to why Ambassador Sondland would have direct communication with the president, and why Ambassador Sondland would have any communicate with the President Zelensky or Mr. Yermak. But nonetheless, Bill Taylor testifies that Ambassador Sondland also said that he talked to President Zelensky and Mr. Yermak, and he told them that although there was not a quid pro quo, so he says there's not a quid pro quo, if President Zelensky did not clear things up in public, okay, we would be at a stalemate. Now, Now, what does that mean? We'd be at a stalemate. What does that mean? There's a whole host of things that could mean. There's a whole host of things. And basically, that could mean, listen, President Zelensky, get on the horn, get in the public, tell the people that, we're going to clean up corruption, that we're going to get rid of the swamp, we're going to do these things, we're going to work with the United States, we're going to have a great relationship with them, we're going to work very closely with understanding, these investigations that took place, the meddling that transpired during the 2016 elections. We're going to look into Burisma Holdings. We're going to look into the allegations that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden was embezzling taxpayer money and laundering it through Burisma Holdings, as well as tens of millions, if not billions of dollars of Ukrainian money lost. So there's a litany of things that could mean. And it doesn't mean that if you don't do that you're not going to get the much needed necessary military aid. Now, that brings me to another point. In the hearings, they testified that the July 25th conversation took place, and then August 11th, okay? No, let me back up. Let me get you the exact date, because the timeline is very important. Please forgive me. I want to get you the exact date because this is very important. Okay. Of course, this doesn't have it. Please forgive me. I should have had this up because this is very important. See, this is Google for you because I know for a fact because they testified in the hearings yesterday. I'm gonna have to go back and look, but Speaker Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, she states, okay, that they're gonna move forward with an impeachment inquiry. Okay, that's okay. Let me back up. August 11th, the military aid was released to the Ukrainians to include lethal aid, javelins, that they desperately needed, that prior administration did not do. Okay? So, President Trump has done more for Ukraine in the way of beans, bullets, and band-aids more than any president prior to him. Now, mind you, in 2014, Crimea was annexed underneath the Obama administration. This happened underneath their watch. And now they're making it President Trump's problem. And President Trump is not dealing with the corrupt Ukrainian government. He ran on the whole premise that he was going to clean up the swamp. And in the corruption and the allegations and everything else that behind the Robert Mueller report is the exact reason why President Trump ran, because all they ever did was try to smear him, try to pick up some dirt, some dirty dossier that was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Fusion GPS and Nellie Orr, whose husband just so happened to work for the Department of Justice, and all these FISA warrants and all this stuff, and it was all corrupt. It was all one big scheme. And up until the fact that I was working on a timeline with Richard Nixon, I could never believe that something like this could happen. I'm like, this is ridiculous. There's so many moving parts. There's so many people involved. How could this happen? And then I started getting into the whole Richard Nixon timeline with Watergate scandal, and I'm like, holy crap. like these CIA agents and operatives and FBI agents and all this stuff was involved in all this shit. So it's totally possible, guys. This isn't a conspiracy. All right? It's not a conspiracy at all. These guys did it, and they undermined the president, and they've been trying to impeach the president since 2016. Okay? So now let's fast forward to what I'm trying to tell you today. Okay? August 11th, military aid was released. August 12th, the whistleblower complaint was released. Now, I believe it was Ambassador Taylor who had 3 meetings over 55 days with President Zelensky. And 2, according to his testimony, 2 of the 3, he had no idea that any aid was being withheld at all. So in order for you to extort somebody, in order for you to ask for quid pro quos in any manner of the such, the other person has to be aware that they're being extorted. You have to say to them, listen, if you don't do this, then I'm going to do this, or I'm not going to do that. That's extortion. If the other person has no idea that that is what you're going to do, how can you extort somebody? Listen, in the phone transcript, it says President Zelensky ran on the same principles and the same tactics that President Trump did. He looks up to President Trump. He admires him. He wants to drain the swamp. His words. President Zelensky said, I want to drain the swamp like you. He has a strong affinity for President Trump. They have a great relationship, and all we want to do is just destroy that by this bullshit impeachment hearing in the news, the mainstream media just utterly destroying they're going to try and destroy any sort of type of relationship that President Trump has. And you know what? You know what's absolutely mind-boggling? These people don't get it. President Trump can walk into a room, captivate an entire room with a smile and a handshake and a joke and be friendly. And he's not this total asshole that other people make him out to be. Because President Trump, over his entire life, has done nothing but given back to the people. He donates his entire presidential salary to charities. He doesn't accept it. What other president has done that? He's not doing this to be president. And if you think he's doing this because he wants fame, you're out of your mind. He was on The Apprentice. He was on all kinds of TV shows. He had more fame before this. People loved him before he was president. And then they all turned on him. So there's absolutely no gain here for the president. None. He's lost business because he became president. That's a fact. If you think for 1 second that somehow that he's going to weasel his way in and make some sort of kind of law or executive order to somehow make his business better, you're absolutely nuts. Sorry about the tangent, but I'm getting really sick and tired of the liberals. I'm getting really sick and tired of these false allegations and these wild allegations. And Adam Schiff, what a piece of shit. How is this man still in Congress? The people in California are just absolutely ridiculous. Who's that guy that they just elected? Who's like, well, if you're pissing shit on the sidewalk, I'm not going to charge you. What? So what you're telling me is that, all of the disease, all the bacteria that's associated with the rapid growth of your homeless communities are free to live in public domicile, on your sidewalks, in your streets, on public property, in the parks, wherever the hell they want, shit and piss wherever the hell they want. And then when a little kid goes around and starts playing, he steps in human feces and stuff and brings home bacteria and things like that, bodily fluids and things, infectious diseases that these homeless people get from using and reusing needles. It's going to be perfectly okay with you. All the while, ironically, we got the governor of Texas stepping into San Antonio and saying, no more. We're cleaning up these camps. You're not doing it. California, man, you guys really need to figure it out, man, because you're lost. You are lost. Anyway, back to the hearings. So Jim Jordan, okay, Jim Jordan. Let me pull up the transcript real quick here. Oh, geez, I have all kinds of things open here. So Jim Jordan, he points out something that's absolutely hilarious, and this is what I'm talking about. Here it is. Okay, it's gonna take me. Wow. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard for me to read because it's very cumbersome. Okay, I might stumble over my words, but here's the proof. Here is the level of hearsay that these guys are testifying to. Let me read this to you. This is from Jim Jordan, who read a passage from testimony, and he says, "I'll read the whole thing." In part, there's a little bit more. Let me see if I can back up so you get some context. All right, he says, Jim Jordan says, "I understand. All right. So again, just to recap, you had 3 meetings with President Zelensky, no linkage, and those 3 meetings came up. No linkage in those 3 meetings that came up. Ambassador Zelensky didn't announce that he was going to do any investigation of the Bidens or Burisma before that aid was released. He didn't do a tweet. He didn't do anything on CNN. Didn't do any of that. President Zelensky, excuse me." And then what you have in front of you is an addendum that Mr. Sandlin made to his testimony that we got a couple of weeks ago. That's the addendum that he did after he testified in Congress. It says, "Declaration of Ambassador Gordon Sandlin. I, Gordon Sandlin, do hereby swear and affirm as follows. I want you to look at point number 2, bullet point number 2, second sentence. Ambassador Taylor recalls that Mr. Morrison told Ambassador Taylor that I told Mr. Morrison that I conveyed the message to Mr. Yermak on September 1st, 2019 in connection with Vice President Pence's visit to Warsaw in a meeting with President Zelensky." Let's read it again. Ambassador Taylor recalls that Mr. Morrison told Ambassador Taylor that I told Mr. Morrison that I conveyed this message to Mr. Yermak on September 1st of 2019 in connection with Vice President Pence's visit to Warsaw and a meeting with President Zelensky. What? What? How confusing is that? I recall that I said to you that you recall that I said to you that this happened. Ambassador Taylor recalls Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison told Taylor that I told Morrison that I conveyed the message to Mr. Yermak on September 1st. Do you understand how confusing that is? Like, why didn't he just write in the addendum, after having a conversation with Mr. Morrison, I came to the recollection that I told or I conveyed a message to Mr. Yermak on September 1st in connection with Vice President Pence's visit to the Warsaw meeting with. So, Ambassador Taylor Oh God, my head hurts. Ambassador Taylor recalls that Mr. Morrison told Ambassador Taylor that I told Mr. Morrison. So evidently, Gordon Sandlin was the leak. Gordon Sandlin was the leak that told President Zelensky that there was that military aid was going to be held. But the fact of the matter is that the military aid was already released. It was already released. President Zelensky had no idea. None. And here's the better catch of it all. Ambassador Sondland only told President Zelensky this after all of this became public. After the whistleblower complaint became public. So the whistleblower complaint became public in 2012. August 12th. And so less than 3 weeks later, Ambassador Sondland tells President Zelensky on September 1st that the military aid was being withheld, which it was already released. It was released August 11th. The whistleblower complaint, it was released before the whistleblower complaint ever came out. So, in fact, we had Speaker Nancy Pelosi coming out in public announcing an impeachment inquiry before the whistleblower complaint was ever released. Guys, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I mean, let me know what you guys think, okay? Please, tell me what you guys think. I got one thing that I need to add here because it's absolutely driving me nuts, okay? This guy here, he's a Democrat from Illinois, okay? His name is Representative Mike Quigley, and I think his last name is very fitting. Not to poke fun. But how is this guy like an actual attorney? Does he have a license to practice law? If you didn't watch the hearings, okay, this man said hearsay can be more important and more vitally important than, I might be paraphrasing, but more vitally important than evidence, than fact. Let that sink in. Hearsay can be more vitally important than fact or evidence. How? In what way? There are seriously countless studies in which we know for a fact that hearsay is just garbage, which is why it's not admissible in court. You cannot go into court, into a criminal court, in any court, okay, and tell a judge that I heard so-and-so say. Then the judge is going to say, no, stop. You can't start a sentence with, I heard so-and-so. No, not allowed. But yet this guy is going to sit there in front of the American people and tell people that it's okay that Mr. Kent and Mr. Taylor can sit in front of the American people and talk about what it is that they heard from others or what they believe or what the presumptions are because they've never met the president. They had no idea. They weren't on the phone conversation, and they only heard through second and third-hand knowledge whatever information it was or through open source media. And Sondland is the one that leaked the fact that the aid was going to be withheld, which wasn't even connected to the damn phone conversation anyways, had nothing to do with that. And they're going to say, well, you know, sometimes this information can be a lot more damning than fact or evidence. And you're right, it is more damning. It's profoundly more damning because it's not true. And you're going to convict a person, and by convict I mean impeach a person based off of hearsay knowledge, and none of it is true. None of it is true. Now, I challenge anybody who's watched this whole video to please debate me. Tell me what it is that I missed. Tell me. I would love to have a friendly debate. We could go live. We could do like a little podcast, side by side interview. I would love to do something like that. If you guys are into something like that and you see the video, please like, subscribe to the video, click on the bell for notifications when I go live again. Let me know what you guys think of the video in the comments below. Thank you so much for your guys' support. And thank you for joining me here at American Overwatch. And we'll see you on the next one.